What's going on, casters? Dylan from Pandito Gaming, back again with another video. And this time we're going to start a new style of video that I'm referring to as Dear Elestrals. And these kinds of videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through what feedback I would give to the Elestrals team, some ideas that I would have to help improve the existing sets that we have. Today, we're going to be primarily talking about Shattered Stars. This will eventually be something that I'll want to make for sealed product in general, but we'll see how this goes. Maybe it's something that people enjoy, but it's just kind of an outlet for me, if nothing else, to give some suggestions that maybe somebody sees and hey, maybe other people will agree, or maybe something will actually happen in the trading card game. But um, before we get started, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, whether you haven't been in Elestrals very long, or maybe Elestrals is really the only place you've been within the TCG space, you haven't played many other games. Shattered Stars is kind of what most different TCGs will call a specialty set. It's very similar to what Pokemon has for their holiday or half sets. One Piece has an anniversary set, so does Gundam. There's a whole bunch of different TCGs that do stuff like this. It's not really similar to Magic's the Gatherings, Universes Beyond. Basically, the idea of a specialty set is that it is an opportunity for the TCG to reprint a lot of playable cards, sometimes with new arts. But it also is a avenue for people or for the TCG to create alternative arts of higher rarities for different cards. Um, if you look, for example, at what is probably the most one-to-one demonstration, Pokemon specialty sets are very similar, where they'll take all of the playable cards from the last few sets and they'll make reprints of them to try to drive down the price of those. And at the same time, they will also print new high rarity versions of a lot of the more popular cards. This is an example of Prismatic Evolutions, where they took all the evolutions and made fancy arts for them, among a bunch of other ones too. That's very similar to what you see in Shattered Stars. Now, historically, that's kind of been played down a lot more. I think a lot of the art is very similar in quality, like the stained glasses and the constellations. A lot of the full arts that they build, they could fit like for like in how Pokemon is building things. Now, there's a lot fewer cards in those sets, but it's a very similar style. So just so everyone's on the same page, that's more or less the comparisons that you'll make. Now, for the advice or feedback that I'm going to be giving, I'm primarily going to be geared towards things that would either make me as a collector want to open packs more, or as an investor reseller would encourage other people to want to open packs or be willing to spend more on the products that are being created for it. So how do we drive the value inside up so that we are driving people to want to open the packs? I know Elestral's leadership has primarily said we want people to open the cards. As a sealed investor, I'm somebody who wants people to open them as well, so that the sealed investments that I have become more and more scarce in the market. So it's kind of similar along that, and I do think it is good for most people involved. Now, that does mean that prices get driven up for the sealed product, and it's harder to open things long term, but opening the product puts more singles out on the market, which in turn should drive down costs for things in the short term. Um, so now that we've kind of gotten all that out of the way, let's start first with some of the feedback that I think they've already acted on. As you can see on the way that we have been approaching Ethereal, a lot of the criticism that started early on for Shattered Stars has been addressed. So I think they're listening to the community. I think they're iterating on this. I think they're making a lot of good progress. I think the two main pieces of feedback that you heard all the time was, hey, when I'm opening these packs, I get the exact same commons in every single pack, and it's just a really bad experience over and over again having to pull the same 5, 6, 7 cards and just basically either throwing them to the side, throwing them in a box, or potentially even just throwing them away. So I do think by expanding the pool of commons that you can get to a significantly higher number, you're not just getting all of the same cards over and over again. Now, for those of us who will be opening hundreds of packs, it will still be a very similar experience, but at least the bulk is not as overwhelmingly consistent every single time. Now streamers can actually show the cards they're going through, as opposed opposed to just, cutting off the first 5 cards in the pack and moving on. I think the other big thing that they really took advantage of here was changing the packaging and making it more marketable. I think the team bags full of 3 packs and later the super big packs that had 3 packs inside of it, they just weren't very appealing to collectors. Nobody really had a desire to keep them sealed. They would be hard to display, especially those 3 packs that you had to rip open to get the other 3. Like it, I don't know. It just wasn't very appealing. I do think the ethereal box will potentially be a lot better. I have not gotten my hands on ethereal yet. I have seen some of the posts that people have made from Card Party. I do think some of the packaging and the cards inside look great. So keep in mind, I haven't actually had it in my hands yet. I might change my mind later, but I do think this is a big step in general towards just a more marketable product. Now, while the problems with the common repetition has more or less been resolved, one of the other big pieces of feedback that was received was the repetition of rares was also overwhelmingly negative at times, right? You would go through and you'd be like, oh man, I got a Toxeon. That's super disappointing. Followed by an Arcolith. Not very exciting. A Thunderbolt of Zeus and a Race to the Top in the first Shattered Stars was just like very disappointing. And after a certain number of packs, you just start getting disappointed anytime you don't have a reverse stellar or a serialized stellar. So if you're chasing a card in here, you're not really incentivized to open more than maybe 10, 20 packs, get your playset of what you want, and then there's no reason to open any more packs unless you want to chase a serialized. And I can tell you from experience, when you're chasing a serialized card and the pull rates are 1 in 100 to 1 in 150, and you just keep seeing the same cards over and over again, you may or may not understand the value of your cards and you're just not pulling your chase. It can get a little stagnating over time and you just don't feel like pulling it as much. I think you saw this a lot on A Drive's video where he was searching for the Antitan. You got people commenting all the time saying like, why are you getting the same cards? Or, I don't know why you keep on doing this, when he was pulling consistently reverse sellers. Like there was one video where he pulled like 5 different mudlets and said he was going to start a farm with them, right? Like that should be exciting. That should be cool. And I think especially in the old Shattered Stars, that was missing. If you look in ethereal, I don't know that that's really going to be resolved with this change. I do think you will definitely see an improvement in it. Now that there are 16 different rares that you can pull, instead of just 4 to 7, I think was the most we had, maybe 8. I do think that's better, but I do think we're still not close enough to where we really want to be. I think if you look at some of the most successful card games, they have a lot more variance in the cards that you're pulling in their specialty sets. Now, again, this might not be the goal of Elestrals. Elestrals might just want to get people to come in and open just enough packs that they need to get the cards that they want and then move on. As a sealed investor, as a collector who wants to chase those high-end cards, I want more variance. I want more interesting things so that when I open a pack, I'm not opening the same card 4 times in 20 packs, right? I want a good variety of things because long term as well, the value of singles aren't going to go up. If we take a comparison here to one of, in my opinion, the best sets in Pokemon history, Sword and Shield's Crown Zenith, this set was absolutely stacked. It was a set that is probably the most opened set in the history of Pokemon, if I had to guess. This set had a 50% pull rate for a hit. In almost every single pack, you would get a card that was exciting. Now, Shattered Stars kind of eliminates that or that concept because there's no such thing as rares that aren't big hits. And I'm not suggesting that Elestrals adds cards in that are just there for filler. I don't think we necessarily need that. But if you look through these cards, this is the main set, which is the very similar to what are like the mid-tier hits. You hit these, especially like the V Maxes and the Vs, every 1 out of 3 packs or so. The Secret Pikachu is very similar to kind of like a reverse stellar or a serialized in these packs, and they're very exciting to hit the big ones. The other ones are more of just like, hey, this is cool, this is nice, it makes me feel good because I hit something. But where Crown Zenith really shines is in its Galarian Gallery. Pokemon has a concept that used to be called trainer galleries. Before it was called secret rares. Now it's called illustration rares in English. They keep changing the names. I don't know why. In Japanese, they've always called it art rares, which is just more logical to keep the same name. But for whatever reason, in English, they keep changing the names. The idea here is that these are full art cards that tell a story about the Pokemon. And as you look through these, you can see some of these are scenes from the games reimagined. Some are from different movies or part of the TV series reimagined in a card view. Some of these are interconnecting arts that match together with other cards. Like that Pikachu on the leaf matches up with all of these other forest style cards to make one big picture. And this concept was really carried forward as well in other series too. And I think those are probably what is leading to one of the biggest parts of the Pokemon market boom right now is people are seeing these cards and they're building feelings around them. They love the way they look, with a story that it tells. It gives them some kind of relation with the Pokemon themselves. And I think that's something Elestrals could do as well. So one of my biggest points, which this really kind of leads into two different points, which are, I think, Elestrals specifically in Shattered Stars, but really in all of their sets in general, could really use a mid-tier chase. And I also think that the illustration rare, the story art card concept, is something that would fit really well with Elestrals, which doesn't really have enough lore to get people to be attached to the Elestrals yet. I do think that will come potentially with Awakened, but I think having these art cards, these story cards that really tell you about the Elestral and how they act in their natural environment, the ways they think and behave, that can really help people start to relate to those Elestrals up front. So first, let's talk about the mid-tier chase concept. Like I mentioned, if you look at the cards here, in Shattered Stars, you get a cool-looking card in every single pack. The problem is when you talk about hitting the reverse stellars, these reverse stellars are roughly 1 out of every 30 packs, plus or minus, maybe 20 to 40. They don't come up very often. It also is hard to really relate to these. And so really you're just going through pack by pack, and after a certain point you're just like, oh, it's another rare, it's another rare, still no reverse stellar. I think having a card that is 1 out of 15 to 1 out of 20 rarity, something like the illustration rares or trainer gallery cards, that's roughly their pull rate in most of Pokemon's history as well. They're between 1 in 10 and 1 in 20 packs. I think that would be really cool, something to add, and having a variety of those. Right now, you have one rarity, and there's 8 cards that fill it. And if you hit one of those rarities, you're going to hit one of those 8 cards. If you instead took 4 cards and said, hey, this is going to be 1 out of 15 to hit one of these 4 cards, now hitting a specific one is 1 out of 60. It doesn't over dilute the population of everything else. It's not so insanely hard that it's the same as a reverse stellar, but it's something nice. It's something that pops, that's like, oh yes, I got this card, but it's not 1 out of every 30 or 40 packs, right? It's something that really makes people happy and excited because it's something out of the ordinary versus, maybe they have a specific chase that they're looking for here, but after you hit that card 2 or 3 times, is it really that exciting to get anymore, short of it just being worth money and you're like, ooh, I hit the big card that's worth more. I think having that mid-tier between the rares and the reverse stellars, specifically in Shattered Stars, would be worth it. I think the full arts fill that niche in the mainline sets. It helps them, but there's no lower level here. The rares are the lowest level of rarity, and people get bored of them after a certain number of packs. Now, as far as the illustration rares, the story cards, I think this is best described looking at some of the newer arts. Pokemon, especially in the Scarlet Violet block, really put an emphasis on building cards that told you about the Pokemon. So if you look here, there's an evolution line in Pokemon that goes Ralts, Kirlia, Gardevoir, and you can really see the story here where a young Ralts is growing up with a girl who's moving into a house. And over time, that girl grows up into a woman and has her own child. And you can see the Ralt has evolved into a Curlia and is helping her watch after her child. And then now that woman has grown up into a much older woman, she's a grandmother, and Gardevoir is with her. Like, this tells a story. There's other things just like this. Like, there's this Fido card here who's looking in a bakery shop. He eventually evolves into a larger dog that's made out of sweets, and he's laying inside of the shop. It's really cool. It drags people in and makes them feel and relate to these Pokemon, and it makes them want these cards. You may already have 50 Ralts cards, but you see this card and you're like, oh, this is unique. I want this. And it's not just this card, it connects to other cards. So the story cards, the illustration rares, the connected arts, the connected story cards, we have a few connected stories, connected arts where cards will look similar or be different variations of a scene. I think that's really cool. I really like the full art design though. I think that really pushes people into the experience, and it drives some level of value for the card as well. Now, back to what we were talking about before, specifically around the reverse stellars. I do think there is some need to rework this level of rarity. I don't know for sure what the right way to go about this is, but today reverse stellars are really just a I want to bling my deck out slightly more collectible card. A lot of people who collect sets are now saying like, hey, this isn't even in the main numbered set. I don't need to get reverse stellars. They're not really all that interesting to me. Reverse stellars, when they first came out, I think it was nice to add an extra level of like, oh, I got something special. But unless you're the one pulling the cards, these don't have a ton of appeal to them. Players will buy these, fans of the specific Elestrals will buy these, but what is pushing people to want these more? Now, could this be something where you take these and put them in full art cards, or you add texture to these? Maybe you change it to where it's a different art, just something a little bit more unique about it. I'm not sure exactly what to do here personally, but I do think that these aren't really achieving the niche that they should be driving. They should be a good, valuable card that people enjoy, but a good chunk of these cards become completely unsellable, where I've seen people try to sell these for $10, $15 each just to try to get rid of them because, you open 100 packs and you end up getting 3 of these, and a lot of people don't even want one copy sometimes. Not to say that like that's right or wrong. I'm just giving my observations from what I've seen. I do love the idea of the stellars, but it's kind of like the baby shiny idea in Pokemon cards. They look really cool. They're really nice, but in Pokemon where the rarities are significantly higher, those cards will often sell for $5 or $10 each, and these aren't intended to be that price range, at least not in my opinion. I don't know if that's what Elestral's intent is, but a lot of these cards, there's only a few hundred copies of each one. So you would expect that these should push a higher value, just a lot of times they don't. And whether that's because people don't understand the rarity of them, whether that's because they're just not appealing as half arts with just a little bit fancier colorations and stars on them, I'm not sure. But I do think these could use a revamp at some point in the near future, as one of my main pieces of feedback. Um, the last thing that I would throw out, which I think is just an interesting idea, I think it could be really cool. Pokemon does something where they have a Pokemon Center exclusive version of their Elite Trainer boxes, which are very similar to this. A lot of times, people don't really understand how important that is to other parts of the market. There are a lot of people who insist on getting a copy of both the Pokemon Center ETB and the regular ETB because a lot of times they'll have different colorations and different styles to them. I think something that would be really cool from a sealed investor's perspective would be to take the boxes that they're selling here on the Elestrals main site and make the Elestral on the front uh, a different kind of stellar variant or something that looks a little bit different, maybe a different Elestral from the set to where you could put the two boxes side by side on a shelf and it looks really cool. I think long term there will be people who will want to pick up every single set of this. Um, Pokemon does some extra stuff where they add like an extra stamped variant of the box, the promo that comes with it. They also add a couple extra packs. But I think a lot of people are just flat ordering from Shop Elestrals and they don't really understand other stores and other places. They're not interested in going to those other places. But I think if a lot of the people who are buying on Elestral's website knew there was a different variant somewhere else, it would drive them to want to go and purchase those as well. I think that would be a really good way to kind of seed interest in other stores on top of making just something really cool and collectible that comes off of the website itself. Now, does that drive scalping or too much demand is a different conversation. I think a lot of these pieces of feedback, you have to take them the right way because Elestrals doesn't have the same printing size as some of these other sets. Like when I talk about Crown Zenith, there were probably millions of those ETBs printed. It was okay for them to have 70 different trainer gallery cards because they had so many cards. If Elestrals decided in Shattered Stars, hey, we're going to have 70 different variants of our rares, that would mean if we're only printing somewhere around 15,000 packs, that you're going to have a very reduced number of each card. And essentially, that makes almost every card serialized at that point because you're only talking about hundreds of cards, hundreds of copies of each card. So I don't think we could go that far, but I do think, like I said, that we could take something at a story card or some full art, something that kind of gives artists more ability to work with the Elestrals as opposed to just putting them flat standing in a lot of what they're doing, and put maybe 5, 10 of those at a 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15, 1 out of 20 rarity. I think that would pump in a lot of enjoyment in opening the packs. It'd give a sense of excitement that's kind of missing now for people who are opening more than 3, 5, 10 packs at a time. That would be really meaningful for me and something that I would enjoy. But yeah, so those are kind of my thoughts. I do think, just to be clear, that they are doing an amazing job with Shattered Stars. It has been one of their coolest and best selling parts of their TCG so far. It has been very profitable for people who are opening and selling stuff coming out of it. I think Ethereal is going to be an even bigger step up from that. But these are just some ideas that I think would make people enjoy it more and make people want to crave just continuing to open this even after they've experienced it a couple times already. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm crazy? Is there anything I said that you disagree with? Are there ideas that you have that you want to throw out there? Leave a comment. Let me know. If you like this kind of content, let me know. Add a like to the video or comment and tell me you like these kinds of feedback ideas. If there's anybody working in Elestrals who wants more feedback, just hit me up. I'm happy to talk to people. I love sharing ideas, but these are kind of just my ramblings. If you enjoy listening to me rant and ramble for a long time, I'm planning to post a video on my channel every single day for the first month that I'm here. So there's going to be lots of content coming. Make sure you subscribe so you get a hold of that. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate you. We're out.